Members, the question is the motion be agreed to. I'll give the call to the Honourable Lynn MacLaren for your valedictory speech.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, I rise to respond to the Governor, but also, more importantly, to say farewell. I acknowledge that we meet on Aboriginal land of the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I want to pay my respects first off to their elders past, present, and emerging. There are many in the public gallery that I wish to welcome, Kaya, and to acknowledge. And I will do so throughout my valedictory comments tonight. One person who is not here, who is already with the water. One person who's not here who is listening on the internet in the early morning in Oregon. And I'll get this over with in the beginning. I want to acknowledge her at the outset, is my mother, who has been a wonderful role model of independence, strength, and compassion. To Madeline and her partner Scotty in Medford, I want to say thank you for your support, your love, and your encouragement. When my mother and my father and I set out in the family car through the snow-covered San Bernardino Mountains towards LAX, that's the Los Angeles International Airport, in January of 1979, there was no way of knowing that the journey would lead to this teary farewell from the first American-born representative in WA Parliament in 2017. My home in the California Mojave Desert, which would see the trial of the first concentrated solar plant in 1981, was a long, long way from the Swan coastal plain, almost exactly half a globe away. But like any journey, it began with a spark of an idea, a rough plan, and in my case, the courage to improvise. It has been an honour and a privilege to represent the South Metropolitan region of Western Australia for the past 8 years. The region has a great many Aboriginal elders who carry its stories and share a wisdom of the oldest living culture on the planet with all who are ready to hear it. And I want to thank those leaders in our communities who have shared their knowledge and who have sought to educate me. In my 20 years in Greens politics in this region, I feel like I've only begun to connect to the land and its people. I've been humbled to bring a voice to many issues of the traditional owners. And I want to express my appreciation to the elders of this region who I have come to know just a little bit during this time in Parliament. The Reverend Seelan Garlett and Marilyn Garlett, to Marie Taylor, to Noel Nanup and Sean Nanup, to Trevor Wally, Dr. Richard Wally, who was just here for the opening, to Charlie Kickett, who I only recently met down in Rockingham, to Len Collard, to Matthew and Barry Maguire. I also acknowledge some of the emerging elders and the wise women in our region, many of whom I hope will remain my friends, and some of whom I hope are with us today. Della Ray Morrison, Carla Hart, Ingrid Cumming, Karina Abraham Howard, Dorinda Cox, Marianne McKay, and Tammy Solinek. There are so many more, I cannot list them all here, but I want all to know how I respect you greatly, and I am in awe of your resilience in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. For the past 4 years, serving as one of only 2 Greens in Parliament, I've extended my reach to help people throughout the state, wherever possible. I have a long list of portfolios for which I was responsible to keep abreast of parliamentary actions and to maintain relationships with people and organizations. I note that many people joining us in the public gallery tonight are from some of these organizations. Thank you for your support. I just want to mention a couple of them because I saw them earlier. Food Watch is one of those organizations that I've worked with for a long time. Point Perrin for the People and Hands Off Point Perrin. There are people from the Safe Schools Coalition here today, the No WA Shark Cull Coalition, and social justice movements, animal rights organizations, wildlife carers, and local councils. This term has been incredibly rewarding and rich with experiences, and I want to just share some of those highlights of the 2013-2017 term. It should come as no surprise to any of you that the first thing I'm going to mention is saving Beeliar wetlands. At great environmental cost, and what I imagine has wielded a terrible impact on the spiritual, cultural, and historical sites in the area near Bibber Lake, North Lake, and Coolbalup bushland, in the weeks leading up to the election, we saved Beeliar wetlands from the construction of the Roe Highway Stage 8 extension. Thousands of people took part in almost daily demonstrations, rallies, and protest actions. The local wetland protectors, the wildlife carers, and spiritual custodians were generous in sharing their knowledge. We learned about nonviolent direct action. We formed affinity groups. Mums became liaison officers. Musicians became organizers. And individuals became a community. Several people were arrested and charged. Many were fined. Some charges were subsequently dropped or lessened. The actions of the police have been subject to complaint, and an inquiry has been requested. The wheels of bureaucracy are much slower than the courts. While the new government has announced running a fine-tooth comb through the previous treasurer's accounts, they have been silent about the use of force by the police, the charging horses, and the unmuzzled dogs which patrolled the fences, the loss of trust in Her Majesty's finest. Tears fall today, months after the machines were silenced, when I pass by the scars, the land ripped by dozers, the mounds of soil in place of a biodiversity bonanza, the trees shredded, reduced to steaming mulch piles. The animals, the fortunate few animals, relocated. Many, many more massacred. The crawling, creeping, hopping, slinking ones who could not fly away would not be caught in traps. On Sunday, I planted a tuart tree in what would have been in the shadow of the tall Rottnest Island pines near the corner of Hope and Progress roads. It would have been in the shadow of those ancient pines had the contractor not chopped off the tops, leaving stumps which still tower over the now barren landscape, a stone's throw from the riverbank where the Beeliar people once camped. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, will plant and weed and nurture the soil till the scars burst back into life, now that the election is won. Bitterly, I reminisce of the rally in 2005 when Labour candidates said they would stop the highway. Like marriage equality, it is well past time for them to deliver. From little things, big things grow. How long ago? It was 2004, and I worked for the Honourable Jim Scott when Mark Hingston, Joe Branco, Professor Phil Jennings, and Felicity McGeorge, who is now Bairstow, and a handful of others alongside the Noongars, so long ago defended this patch from the Stevenson-Hepburn planned highway. I recall Joe holding on to an EPA report from 2004, which said Row 8 should never be. They knew it then, and the Liberal Party in government knew it before, in 2016, when their pollsters reported their party's demise before the bulldozers and the police were deployed to destroy and to defend the destroyers. I have to say it. This is my last parliamentary speech, and I have to say it. Shame on you. I have looked into the eyes of those very young girls and boys who came to their beloved wet bushland, wonderland, nature playground to watch the machines rip it apart. They hoped it would stop because their parents were protesting. I know the cost of your policy, the lack of vision, the alternatives, the respect for nature, and now perhaps you know it too. Perhaps because you so comprehensively lost the election, you will rethink the link. The lost boys, the once Liberal members of Jandakot, Southern River, and Bicton are among those who paid the price. I am reminded of a verse. They would not listen. They did not know how. Perhaps they'll listen now. Over my time in Parliament, I've been an ardent advocate for planning with environment at its heart. And because of the significance of the Row 8 campaign in the state election, I just wanted to outline our tireless work. Since 2005, I've been asking questions about the EPA, the environmental approvals, the land acquisition, the ACMC, which is the Aboriginal Cultural Materials Committee, the MRS amendments, the federal funding, the implementation conditions, the business case, the contracts. There is still much work to be done in this term of Parliament, and I regret not being here to see it through. March 2012, I moved a motion to initiate an amendment to the Metropolitan Region Scheme to delete the zoning of the road reserve of the area proposed for Row 8. I asked a question yesterday about this government's plan for that, and we did not get a decent answer. I implore you members who have this responsibility now, as I leave this chamber, to ensure that work is done and with haste. That was unfinished business that needed to be completed, and a great cost has been paid. Please do that. If you've learned anything from this election, do that, because the people have spoken in their numbers. In August 2015, I presented a petition calling for the Legislative Council inquiry to investigate the alternative proposal for an outer harbour. That was unsuccessful in this chamber. I have written to the Auditor General now, requesting that their office undertakes an investigation into the government's decision-making processes for the Perth Freight Link. I actively supported the Aboriginal Heritage legal case, as you know, with questions month after month, waiting for papers to be tabled on the very last day. Eventually, we got those papers. I put forward alternatives. It wasn't just complaining. I wanted to put forward alternatives. That's what the Greens are here to do. And I put forward the alternative for the outer harbour and the transport solutions. I worked in partnership with those communities, the Save Beeliar Wetlands people and the Rethink the Link people. I attended numerous community events and I spoke at many rallies. And if anyone was following me on Facebook, every morning I was doing a live broadcast directly from the area so that Australians knew what was at risk and how people were prepared to stand up for it. Most recently, during the election campaign, I called for a parliamentary inquiry with the following terms of reference. The decision to invest more than $500 million of taxpayer funds without conducting any business case or other stage of a gateway review. And I think maybe the Labour government, maybe your government is onto this now. Maybe this review into the Treasurer's decision-making processes will reveal something. This inquiry was also to look into the traffic modelling and the noise pollution, the breaches of environmental conditions, including inadequate offsets and failure to follow the management plans, including in relation to fauna, which is so well documented of what happened to that fauna. The destruction of the known spiritual and archaeological sites, and the handling of serious health concerns in relation to asbestos. This, members, was This was on my wardrobe when I went down to the Beeliar Wetlands to protest. We were in fear of asbestos, and we were given these masks. and this was a serious concern. And that has yet to be investigated. So please, please do that for me. Look into that and make sure that WorkSafe did its job. And why didn't they if they didn't? And who was at risk? And why is there asbestos still covered? What's going on down there? The Environment Minister is in this chamber. We are delighted, to have a new Environment Minister, and I really do ask you to take this call up. There is even more work to be done now in the aftermath of this destruction, and I lament not being here, and I couldn't help but use part of my valedictory remarks to set this to-do list for you. It's hard for a Greens activist to, be in a position like this, to be able to voice concerns and bring issues to the Parliament, and then be no longer here, be silenced. Next week, I'll be silenced. It will be up to you. It'll be up to the opposition. And the opposition were the ones that made this decision. So really, I depend on you to do this. Now, there are many people. There were 213 arrests made. And think about that. 213 people were arrested trying to stop something from happening, which as soon as the government got in, said they weren't going to do. So what justice is there for those 213 people who acted in the public good, whose actions were vindicated, I would argue, in the end? Each one of them has a record of assault or trespass. What happened? Let's think about those 213 people who were courageous in their activism. The legal team supporting the people who were arrested are calling for a minority of the police who they believe acted unlawfully to be investigated. And more importantly, a thorough investigation needs to look into the systemic issues that was raised, the culture of policing, the hostility towards nonviolent protesters, and the way that people were targeted and vilified. And I saw this myself. No police force is perfect, but let's not look away. If people made errors, if people made mistakes, if people acted wrongly, then let's get it out in the open. We'd like an inquiry into the actions of the police. I think back when I was working for the Honourable Giz Watson, and we wrote a letter to the police about the training that they did for nonviolent direct action. What kind of training do they have to deal with nonviolent direct action? It's a thing. Ever since, the 60s, people have been, possibly before, I think I mentioned it in my Protect Peaceful Protest speech, but people have been practicing nonviolent direct action for centuries. Our police should know how to deal with it without going over the top with horses in your face. That's not asking much. I can see that the former Minister for the Police is here, and I know she is listening intently, and I hope that she, in opposition, maybe has an opportunity to look at this. I have a list of the charges. Obstruct police officers. One person was arrested for that. 73 people were arrested for trespass. There were 63 charges for trespass and obstructing public officers. There were 14 arrest warrants. But the rest of them, disorderly behavior, breach of a VRO, 1, criminal damage, no authority to drive. So this culture, if you watch the news, you would think it was like the mafia out there. These are moms and dads. These are moms and dads and students and public servants, and they're all just trying to protect this little piece of bushland, and it was well over the top, that response. Enough said. I just wanted to put on the parliamentary record that there is business to be done, that part of my career has been to try to protect the Belair wetlands, and that on reflection, in spite of everything we tried, we didn't get anything achieved until the very end, the 11th hour. Let's not wait for the 11th hour. The next time a member comes and brings up something that's really this critical, maybe we could avoid that next time. And that's why I'm sharing my reflections. The other big thing that I have to talk about was stopping the drum lines. This term kicked off with a summer of shark killing on the government agenda. That we defeated their drum lining program by working with the community, exposing the irrationality of shark culling. It was a hot summer morning at Scarborough Beach, in the auditorium where Missy Higgins would later perform, when I laid out our terms for what we called Barnett's surrender. Respect existence or expect resistance. It was a cry I repeated at the Coburn Wetland Center 3 summers later as the campaign to stop row 8 heated up. In true Australian style, we met them on the beaches in 2014, first at Cottesloe, where thousands gathered in the largest protest rally we have seen since the 1998 Save Old Growth Forest rallies. Then, when at first they refused to back down, dozens took direct action by monitoring those drum lines, by documenting the deaths, by publicizing the irrationality of it. December 2013, the government announced its intention to use lethal drumlines, just surprising most community and marine stakeholders. The first rally at Cottesloe Beach on the 4th of January 2014, organized in days by concerned scuba enthusiasts and other ocean users. 6,000 protesters were at the rally of Cottesloe Beach on the 1st of February 2014. That was an amazing time. I was so blessed to be there. Early in 2014, Sea Shepherd attempted to secure a court injunction to force the government to suspend its policy. And the Greens called for a motion to revoke the exemption to kill protected sharks given to WA. The EPA received hundreds of submissions asking for it to assess or reject the EPA drumline trial. The chair, who's no longer there, but Paul Vogel, to his credit, said the drumline trial, first he said the drumline trial would not be investigated as the environmental impact would be negligible. But then he had to do it. He eventually did it, and he said it was environmentally unacceptable. The shark culling was unacceptable. The drum lines were removed at the end of April 2014 after 172 sharks, including some makos and other species, but mainly tiger sharks, had been captured. About half were released due to being too small, and the rest shot or expired on the drum lines. In July 2014, 30,000 people, 6,751 submissions, and 2 petitions signed by 25,000 people responded to the EPA in regard to the government's plan to continue using drum lines for another 3 years. Intense lobbying and awareness raising by community, by the Greens, and state and federal politicians included an excellent forum on more effective alternatives to mitigate shark hazards. In September 2014, the EPA recommended WA shark drumlines not be implemented. The Premier conceded defeat. The Greens challenged the effectiveness of the so-called imminent threat guidelines that were rebranded as a serious threat. This is the one where they go off after an attack and after a shark bite incident and then try and find the shark and kill it. Thankfully, that too with this government is a policy of the past. But at what cost? At what cost? Governments need to listen, not just at elections. Not just at elections. Since 2000, 15 people have died as a result of a shark bite off the WA coast. There is general recognition by both the ALP and the Liberals now that killing sharks does nothing to make people safer. Instead, a range of other measures, including real-time alerts, improved emergency responses, shark education and awareness, and personal and area-based protective technology to suit different coastal locations and ocean users are the way to go. And I just shook the hand of the new Minister for Fisheries, and I really do think he gets it. I really do. But we need to make sure, because the law isn't good enough. Other successes of this past term include the defeat of forced amalgamations. We also protected peaceful protest by stymieing the bill in the upper house how long? 18 months. Yeah. I want to thank Irma Lockman and the people who formed a coalition of groups to oppose criminalization of democratic protest. And it could be dramatic as well. But yes, we did a good job there, and I noticed the police minister again is here. But we did feel that that was a bridge too far, and we weren't alone. In the end, we had the United Nations human rights experts read out in this House. So, obviously governments try things, don't they? And you need to have a strong opposition. You need to have people who are alert, people who are, experienced, people who have been here and done that, people who care. So another thing I want to mention today, and I know it's because probably the Minister for Road Safety is also here, is the former minister, is the Meter Matters bill. So we had several deaths on the roads from people who were riding a bicycle. What do? Well, I put a bill up and I said, let's be clear about the law. And I did that because there was a national campaign calling for that. And I said, hey, we could do that in WA. We want to protect people on the roads. Let's do that. Well, now, after the election, government's interested in doing that. Why did it take all that time? 2012 was the time when I introduced that bill. And several people died on our roads. So let's just, think about that. And I want to thank at this time Toby Hodgson, Matt Fulton, Sarah and Craig, and all those who backed this campaign, including the Over 55 Cyclist Club. Maybe now I can join you on a bike ride. Now, the other thing I need to mention, of course, and I already mentioned this today, is the GMOs. We had a speech today honoring the memory of the Kim Chance, the former agriculture minister. So that gives you an idea that this issue, too, has gone on for years, for successive governments, Liberal, Labour, Nationals, all been involved in this. And the Greens, thank goodness. The Greens in the balance of power actually did a great job in holding off GMOs in this state for many, many years. This too is a campaign that I worked on for many years. And, it's hard to let go of these campaigns. I'd love to continue working with this. There are many campaigns that are still waiting for that moment when they finally meet their goals, like the food and farmers' rights movements, who are still toiling to make a GM-free WA possible. And I worked for years, and I want to thank Steve and Sue Marsh, Janet Grogan, Maggie Lilith, and Shirley Collins, and in particular Bob Phelps from Gene Ethics, and Madge and B. Winfield, and there's another long list of dedicated farmers who we've stood beside. And, there's a march coming up for this. So if you're keen about this, there is a march coming up, I think, on the weekend. And many thanks to my former research officer, the multi-talented Louise Sales. She supported me so well through that campaign. We've lost her now to Tasmania, I think. But I want to thank her. Now, I want to just mention, it should come as no surprise to any of you that in many of these earth-protecting campaigns, women are front and center, driving, steering, and at its very heart. From the days of the late Mary Jenkins, an indefatigable feminist in the South Metropolitan region, to the ever-present former Senator Joe Valentine, women have seen what needs to be done. They've rolled up their sleeves, they've crafted a new phone tree, and they got the party started. Natalie Banks is one such woman of the No Shark Cult Alliance. She left her government media position to join Sea Shepherd. Today from Dubai, she wrote, quote, "When I first thought of rallying to stop the WA shark call, never in my wildest dreams did I imagine the outpouring of support for one of the most misunderstood creatures. I have never experienced anything like it, and I feel that I may not ever again. But shark lovers, every day you give me hope for the future. Your words and actions compel me to move forward for a better world." Unquote. The recent Rethink the Link and the Save Beeliar Wetlands campaigns brought Kim Dravnieks and Kate Kelly into the limelight, and they were surrounded by powerful women, including Felicity Bairstow, and a very long list going back decades and stretching long into the future as the wounded land is healed. And at one point in the campaign, we pitched a photo idea to the West to photograph all the women at the campaign's heart. The list grew so long, it may have been the reason that the West declined. They need to be a broadsheet for that. Now, I don't mean to diminish the activism of men in WA who are also tireless in their efforts. In particular, I want to single out Robert McLean, John Lawson, and Sean Van Alpine. A group of mates who formed the Numbat Task Force over many years of tracking and photographing their favorite woodland animal. They have grown to be the state's most successful wild numbat protectors, and they were instrumental in the intervention that halted a landfill which threatened some of the last remaining numbats in the wild across Australia. So good on you guys. And that's one of my highlights of my campaign, to know that, of my long time in Parliament, to know that we played a role in highlighting that problem, that my staff worked tirelessly to figure out how could we appeal to the minister, how could we make the end of this. Is that for me? Thank you. Take a message. There are so many campaigns and so many women at the heart of them. I cannot possibly do justice to list them all, but I want to make mention of the animal justice campaigners. Katrina Love and Sandy Ronsley of Stop Live Exports, who I've worked with for years, Amy Wilkes of Animal Amnesty, and today, Alana and Andrea of Free the Hounds were at the steps giving us that petition. But the list goes on and on and on. And I just want to now express my thanks to them for working with us, for giving faith in us, and for trying to make this a better place for creatures that don't have a voice. And I want to acknowledge the many, many people across the state who have tried to save mature trees, including Leisha Jacks, who I met at her activist debut at a rally for the campaign to save the trees at Charles Riley Oval. Working in my electorate has given me an opportunity to help many of my constituents. Among the individuals we helped is a public housing tenant who was bullied, possibly by her neighbors, and I saw the scorched entryway to her small apartment and listened as she recounted the trouble she experienced getting someone to listen, someone to help. We did help. We got her a new accommodation. Everyone who is a member of Parliament has had these issues. And it makes you feel like you're worth it. It makes you feel like, oh, this is what it's about. I can finally, not just arguing about words on a page. I've got somebody in secure, safe accommodation. So I am so grateful for those opportunities. You don't get that much in life to help people directly like that. And being a member of Parliament gives you that opportunity. I recall many hours of debate on the Residential Tenancies Act where I tried unsuccessfully again and again to amend the bill. Then, for years afterwards, speaking up for the disproportionate number of Aboriginal people who were evicted as a result of that housing authority policy. I did everything I could as a member of Parliament. I had the best research. I had help drafting the amendments. But the will was not there in the government to change that legislation. So that's frustrating when you're, working time and time again and you cannot change it. And then you have to deal with the consequences of it because somebody didn't agree. There is much work to be done for the homeless. Every single member of Parliament has a responsibility to provide help, and I would argue to actually end homelessness. This is not pie in the sky. This is something we can do. There is an action plan. Why not just do it? The Greens in the last election campaign launched a policy which is to end homelessness. I met with a roundtable of groups who are serious about this. This is serious. This is not a, sketchy plan. This can actually be done. And all we have to do is set our minds to it. We have to have the will to do it, and we have to pursue that goal and put people in charge to do it. It's possible. We can do it. Why not? The benefits of housing the homeless, of ending homelessness, of reaching in and solving the problems that keep people homeless are exponential. We can do it, but we have to have that will. Because of the inadequate laws that are protecting our green infrastructure and our biodiversity, people turn to their Member of Parliament to help save their much-loved urban bushland and their trees. And that happened for me. I have an amazing photo of that ancient jarrah tree. If you haven't visited it, you can still visit it. It's lying on the ground. It was cut down because somebody apparently complained about the bees. Now, there's a simple problem for that. Most people would know. But somehow, somebody got permission to cut down this tree, which was 200 years old, and provided habitat in a place that, desperately needs it, not far from Row 8. And they just chopped it down, and it broke my heart. And I still remember that time, and I think, it's time for me to go visit that tree. Stories like that are rife throughout our area, throughout the metropolitan region in particular, where people love their local trees and they're knocked down. The law needs to be changed. We have to be able to protect these trees. We have to find some way to protect mature trees on a grand scale, because our biodiversity is being destroyed right before our eyes. I remember saying it in 2009 when I first got elected. We've talked about it a lot over the last 8 years, but nothing's changed. I'd like a model local law that protects mature trees. I'm not here to fight for it. Please. Please. Thankfully, Robin will be here. It's on his list.
He's now.
Now, there were lots of other issues with, other local issues with trees. There was a Healy Road tree. Oh my gosh, I made such good friends, saving this tree, which was being hacked away, was going to be lost. A big branch was taken off. And it's a community coming together to protect an asset, to protect amenity, to protect something they value. It's a wonderful thing. And it happens everywhere. Doesn't matter if you're a Labour member or Liberal member, it's happening in your area. And the next big thing is probably going to be Underwood Avenue. So I'm hoping that members... and Lath Lane. I have to just mention Lath Lane because Vic Park, where we have one of the most senior members in Cabinet who protects Lath Lane, and Lath Lane is in our South Metropolitan region, and the Eagles built an oval and knocked down some trees. And it is a tremendous loss to the community in that area that has not been addressed. And it's death by 1,000 cuts. I hope you're getting some sense that this journey that I talked about at the beginning is a marathon. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. There are times when you sprint, but you have to be able to go with the issues that are in front of you. Greyhound racing came up, who knew? But there was an expose in New South Wales, and then it became business. So being flexible and being able to be impromptu, being able to address issues as they arise is very important, because that's the opportunity for change. And so they've asked us in our valedictories to try and give members ideas for how to approach, the new term. And I would say that was the most successful strategy I had, where you are able to retool and address the issue that is the hottest issue of the day at that time. Sharks is a perfect example. Who knew that I was going to be a shark champion? But it's important that you respond to the issues of the day. And I want to thank the Greens in other states because through this 8 years, I have worked collaboratively with them. I have truly enjoyed working alongside them on campaigns to improve our society, to protect the planet, and to be a voice for the voiceless. Thank you to my friends and colleagues in the Senate and in the state parliaments and in Green groups. I particularly want to acknowledge just some of those Greens MPs I've worked with over the years who've stood up for animals. Christine Milne, Lee Rhiannon, Tammy Franks, Maureen Faruqi, and the late John Kay and Sue Penneque have all been my comrades who have, shared my pain and shared private members' bills and, worked across state boundaries in order to collaborate. And when you're a minor party and there's only a few of you, working together across state boundaries, was a really successful strategy for us. And it's only because of our common bond and our common goals in green politics that made that possible. A lot of this term was spent, and I acknowledge the Honourable Rick Mazza behind me, because he was the chair of this committee that looked into the RSPCA and examined their operations. And, I don't want to go into detail because we have debated that at length over a very long period. But for me, the take-home message is the animal laws in this state need to be updated. And I'm hoping that the Animal Welfare Act is reviewed in this term and that it is strengthened, not weakened, but strengthened across the board. And I'm hoping that, I read that in the paper, if I'm reading the paper, possibly online, that the Animal Welfare Act is reviewed. It has been my solemn responsibility, as well as my great joy, to be a voice for animals over the last 8 years. It is one of the areas in politics which is growing in significance across Australia, and it's long overdue. I've already reflected on the success we had in protecting sharks. It was a hard-fought victory over many months, with a range of powerful and creative advocates in several areas, backed by experts both here and abroad. But if only the law had been strong enough in the first place to protect them. I tried to protect free-range farming from watering down of the labeling laws so that consumers could help to improve the welfare of laying hens. If only the law had been strong enough in the first place to protect them. I tried to stop the overbreeding of greyhounds and the use of them in a sport which causes traumatic injury, leading to euthanasia on a regular basis. If only the law had been strong enough in the first place to protect them. By appealing to the minister, I was successful in helping to save a small population of wild numbats near Dryandra. But the law really should have been strong enough in the first place to protect them. This is the work left undone, to reform the law, which is supposed to protect animals and to ensure their welfare. I want to thank you, Mr. President, for your wisdom and leadership over these years. There were times when you saved me. I'm thinking of the time when a first reading of a bill was challenged, and it was quite a moment for me because I was afraid that I was not going to be able to read in this bill, which was really important to me. And in your wisdom, you took it offline, had a good look at it, and came back with a very measured ruling, and, I have felt safe in your hands, and I wanted to thank you for that. And I'm outgoing, too, so that's not... I want to express my appreciation to the members of the opposition who worked with us over 8 years, gave me fulsome briefings when required, even, tried to... And sometimes, if our values crossed, which they did in the biodiversity and conservation bill, you worked with me. And I appreciated that. I think that, and another member's already mentioned it, when you come from a position of respect, anything is possible. And I offered that respect. I worked with the Honorable Kim Chance. Maybe that's why he taught me that. But when you start from a position of respect, you can go places. And even if we disagreed on many policies, there were many ways that we worked together collaboratively. I will mention some of those as I go on. I want to thank also the members of the Nationals, particularly Colin Holt. It's been a pleasure to work with you over these 8 years. Tearing up? Why is that? But, I knew Colin before. I had met him when I was working at WACOS. I think that's why. And so I knew, we had this common understanding about community services and how difficult it was in the regions. I've always felt we were on a committee together, and I've always, enjoyed working with you. And, if I miss you, I'll call you. I do. I do have your number. I might give you a few questions to ask. Yeah, good. The work we do is mostly determined by the government of the day, who control the agenda and they set their legislative priorities. In Parliament, I debated 92 bills this term. I'm glad you were paying attention. And 38 in the previous term. That was a bit light on because there was 4 of us. I did a total of 130 bills. I moved several amendments, and in the last term, 2 of them were passed. That was exciting. I developed 4 bills of my own. And I had carriage of the Greens biodiversity bill that was introduced by the former member, the Honourable Giz Watson. So I've had quite a workload, and I'm going to mention it here. I'm looking forward to a break. I have thoroughly, applied myself to the task at hand, and it's given me an energy to approach it. But it's a lot of work. And especially when it's on, 1 million crime bills and, 1 or 2, environment bills. It was a hard slog, but, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it, and I did try and apply myself to it, as the now leader of the opposition has, acknowledged. My ability to assess and consult with stakeholders about and debate legislation relies very heavily on my research team, who are also tired. And I want to thank Lee Sinclair, I know she's here tonight, for her tremendous wisdom and her organizational skills and her unflappable way of being. You need someone like that around you. Lee makes deadlines look easy to meet, and she still managed to keep her young family at school and at sporting events. And I even felt supported by Darren, her partner. Lee kept all the balls in the air and has been my supportive friend in difficult times. I am so glad that we shared that office at WACOS way back when. I also want to acknowledge and thank research officers Caroline Perks and Denny Lawrence for their expertise and the wonderful contributions that they made this term and the previous term. There were many others who helped to ensure that I was ready and well briefed for legislation. Most recently, in a volunteer capacity, Jennifer Gardner has helped us. Though I can't name each of you at this time, your assistance to me in my role and your generosity has been deeply appreciated. We scrutinized the government in every way possible. We asked 660 questions without notice, 431 in the most recent term. I want to thank the parliamentary staff, Janice Shaw, she's probably gone home by now. But Janice, you're awesome. I've worked with Janice even when I was working for Jim Scott. She has, very rarely ever, dropped the ball. And it's amazing the volume of work and the deadlines that she meets on a daily basis. Janice, you have my long-term respect. And also Chris Hunt, who manages these questions on notice. And Chris, who took us through that transition to be online. Don't know how you did it, mate, but thank you very much. And I am so glad that my staff know how to do that. I also want to thank the very professional officers who assist us with the business in this chamber. I want to thank the clerk, Nigel. I want to thank Paul Grant. I want to thank Grant Hitchcock. I want to thank Renee Jewell, Paul Laban, Brian Kahn, Lisa Pirelli, and Jackie and Haley. There is no way that I could have done this volume of work unless there was support at every turn. So just little things like, making sure there's water. You don't, and making sure that, you've got a lectern, but also making sure that you also feel respected. Because sometimes you get a bit argy-bargy in here, and they are a great neutralizing impact of just, knowing that, you can look at someone and say, can you just, give me a piece of paper? So I served on the legislation committee this term, and the Honorable Ron McSweeney was our chair. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Well, it was tough being on your committee because we had work to do. We did 15 reports. I think I managed to substitute out for a couple of them. But that was a lot of work, and it was very, very detailed work. The demise of the crown. Talk to me later about that. Yeah. The Honorable Donna Farragut was on the committee as well. Yeah. So I also served on that select committee into the RSPCA, thanks to the Honorable Rick Meza, and I want to thank the committee officers that supported all those committees. Mark Warner, Samantha Parsons, Alex Hickman, Suzanne Valletta, Neem Corbett, and Denise Wong. There are so many people in the background, and I have felt, over the last 8 years, the professionalism in this place is outstanding. And, I just checked that Hansard got that, because if it's not in Hansard, it never happened. And Hansard have been tremendous for me. Some of them have problems with my accent, but we've managed to make most things, even better than how I'm saying them, which is nice. Thank you, and I appreciate that. Over this time, I have hosted 3 Pride at Parliament events. And those Pride at Parliament events have been supported by every other party here. I see Martin's nodding. Thank you very much for co-hosting. Jackie co-hosted. The Honourable Michael Mission co-hosted. The Honourable Helen Morton. That was a wonderful year that you co-hosted. And it made a big difference to the community, I'm here to tell you. They really like it. They really want you to keep doing it. The Honourable Stephen Dawson, who is also a co-host, consistent co-host. And it's just a way to bring that Pride Month, to the significance, I guess, and the importance of legislators into a cultural month of pride. And it was a way to build relationships. I hope that all of you have managed to continue, to keep those communication lines open. And, we invite the media. It's a great opportunity. And it has been my absolute pleasure, one of the highlights of my 8 years, to be able to host a party, a cross-party party for the community at which I feel, so connected to. So I want to thank all those members who found it in their, heart to be generous and co-host those things. I also initiated a Parliamentary Friends of Bandy Up group, which didn't go down so well. I would really love the rest of you to pick that up. That was one stretch too far. Now, it's a great idea. Please, the Parliamentary Friends of Bandy Up would be a great thing, and I can put my people in touch with you. The women. The women who are there. So, yeah, it'd be nice if you're interested, Liz. It might be a good thing. Won't be here. So I would encourage, that's a great opportunity. And I see in the President's Gallery at this time the Honourable Alison Zaman. And Alison, I feel is going to make such a great contribution. Congratulations on your election again, which proves it can be done. And that's the kind of thing I would see Alison, taking to like a duck to water. So, I think if people can find it in their hearts to think of the poor, the women in Bandy Up who really need that kind of boost. I would really implore you, and I know that Simone McGurk is interested. So if we can get, if we can get some more people interested, please take that over. And I could give you the original list of people to invite, but no, take it off. Do what you will. I want to thank all the Parliament House staff. There are so many that we depend upon, and I think I'm going to get a chance to do that on Thursday when we wrap up, so I won't list them now. But know that I thought about you in my valedictory, and I'll mention you later. It has been my privilege to bear witness to the pledges of thousands of those who came across the seas to our boundless gifts that we're sharing. And like me, their journeys to Australian citizenship were layered with farewells and hellos, loss and gain, and always hope. From Afghanistan to Zambia, every continent, young families from Nepal, older couples from Scotland, students from Brazil. That has been one of the joys of my role, to meet these new citizens and to welcome them to Australia. And South Metropolitan Region, possibly more than any other region, just boomed with people from other countries in the last 4 years. And in the first 4 years, too. In the last 8 years, we have had a huge increase of population. So I have welcomed them, and I enjoy the multiculturalism that ensues. Over 2 terms, I have seen Willetton High School transformed. I've been to several openings of new schools in Tuart Grove, Baldivis, Golden Bay, and more. I have visited some of the oldest schools from Vic Park to Attadale. I have spoken at school graduations from Fremantle Primary School to the Octagon Theatre. And I've been inspired by young people and educators at all levels. My team has expanded and contracted over the years. I want to thank all those people who have come in, particularly of late. Elliot Sawyer, who joined us, who lifted our game in so many levels, and then because he was so good, Senator Ludlam took him. And Connor Slight, who we stole from Robin on his day off, who helped us, with amazing audio visuals and great work, in our social media. I want to thank Nadine Walker. Nadine came to my team early in the term, and she really, made a big difference during the Shark Call and through our marriage equality work. And of course, Senator Seward took her because she was awesome. So now Nadine is working with the Senate team, and she's doing an outstanding job, and I do occasionally get to see her too. I want to thank Wanjiku, who was with us a short time, and I still see her, and she made a big difference, to our team, and I really miss her. And in particular, I want to thank Nina Jurak, who Robin has working in his office, and Nina kind of helps us to keep in touch with Robin and, make sure that we're all, working together. But she has helped me, too, in my selection of staff, and she has a long experience that goes back to Giz Watson. These people I am going to miss. I'm going to miss so much, but maybe we'll actually have coffee with each other sometime. I want to say there is nothing like winning an election. But I'm here to tell you that the converse is also true. Losing an election is a uniquely unwelcome experience. To those 32,100 South Metropolitan voters who put the Greens first, above and below the line, I thank you. I know you did it. You don't have to apologize. I appreciate it. But we didn't get over the line. We increased the percentage of voters who chose Green first. To get over the line, we needed 49,384 votes. Can you believe it? Nearly 50,000 votes in South Metro you needed for a quota. And it's more than any other region, by far. Not North Metro, but, it is more than most regions. It seems even more unfair when you look at those first preference voters in the other regions who did deliver their Green representatives. So 33,448 people in North Metro of a quota of 47,782 have a voice in Parliament. 29,810 are about to have a voice in the Honourable Tim Clifford, who was recently elected to the East Metropolitan Region. They have their Greens voice. There are 13,179 Southwest voters who will have a voice as of next week in the Honourable Diane Evers, who again is joining us in the President's Gallery. And she will bring once again a rural voice into this chamber. The mining and pastoral region, again, never say die, Robin Chapel, here again, representing the Greens in the mining and pastoral region. The system is not quite perfect, but it has resulted in the Greens doubling our numbers, which is the result we would get if we had true proportional representation statewide. So, on balance, even though personally it's a bit gutting, it's a great result for the Greens. This isn't the only problem with our electoral system, this, number of people that elect you. And it was revealed in the cold, stark light of that day on March 25th, the day after my birthday, when the results were declared in South Metro. In South Metro, unlike any other region where the Liberal Democrats fielded a candidate, the higher than expected vote for the Liberal Democrats seemed to be due solely to their position on the ballot, which confused voters who may have been looking for the Liberals instead. Preferences flowed to the Liberal Democrats from a starting position of just 13,000 first preferences. So, it's fair enough that those 32,100 Green voters in South Metro feel bereft this week as I leave the Parliament. There is, alas, nothing I can do about it. That is the system we have. Electoral reform should be on our agenda. Now, I want to congratulate the Honourable Sue Ellery for the comprehensive victory, because never before has Labour, 1955 or something, awesome win, awesome vote for Labour. And I do warmly wish you well. I would have loved to have been in a chamber with you and I am now for only a short time, but I like it already. But I would have loved to have, served in a parliament, in a Labour government. Every time Labour gets in, they push me out. 2005, same thing happened. So that's a bummer. And to all the incoming members, and especially the 4 Greens, and the Never Say Die returning Honourable Robin Chapel, I congratulate you. In the weeks since the election, I've been handing over a wealth of material to this awe-inspiring team. I look forward to listening to their inaugural speeches. It is with great sadness that I make my valedictory speech at this close of term. But as I have packed up my office, I've been reminded of the colossal privilege that it is to serve as a Greens Member of Parliament. The Greens have campaigned well in all the regions for the election, and we continue to increase the vote, even in the agriculture region, as well, under the leadership of wheat and sheep farmer Ian James. And I look forward to seeing him in the Parliament one day soon. In the South Metropolitan region, there are 3 new members in the lower house who relied on second preferences from Greens voters to claim their seats. The government should well remember this. No doubt the members for Bicton, Jandakot, and Southern River will remember. So I guess they've got to represent the Greens' interests, because I ain't going to be here. Now, I do want to thank the South Metropolitan candidates who campaigned so well. I loved the team. Dorinda Cox, Thor Kerr, Mark Brogan, Louise Dickman, Martin Spencer, Ryan Quinn, Jody Freeman, Shannon Hewitt's here tonight, I saw him, Tony Picosali, I hope she made it tonight, Jordan Steele, John, James Mummy, and also the team that supported them, Pete Best, Luke Edmonds, Kate Davis, Liam Carter, my campaign manager. Look out for him. Awesome dude.
Absolutely.
Really up and coming. Thank you, Liam. And the South Metropolitan Greens of Robert Delves, Kim Drabniaks, Sonny Miller, Don Jex, Christine Cunningham, and Scott Ryan, who over the years have been my comrades and supporters, and I'm hoping that they will pick me up off the floor once I depart from this place and give me something useful to do with my life. The Greens co-conveners and election campaign committee, the fundraisers, the media team, the policy group, I can't name them all. Hopefully some of my colleagues, as they're incoming, can name them. But I want to thank you. You know, it has been my absolute pleasure to be a Green in Parliament and to carry that mantle on behalf of them all. We may never pass this way again. My most important role, drink water. My most important role now is caring for my partner who is being treated for metastatic breast cancer. She says an unwelcome visitor. Has taken a permanent place in our lives. She says an unwelcome visitor has taken a permanent place in our lives. I look forward to sharing sunsets and pottering around at home on the weekends. Sarah and I were married late last year. It's a bit too quiet. Because we really don't have the right to marry here. In 2012, I introduced a bill which would establish same-sex marriage in WA by amending state laws, including the Family Law Act and the Births, Deaths and Marriages Act. Since 2004, we have waited politely for the Australian Parliament to pass marriage equality laws. It is incredulous that the federal government is still balking at this long overdue reform. In WA, we could have it tomorrow if the McGowan government would simply support this bill. That's it. No more conversation. Equality. Be brave for marriage equality. Your constituents are asking you for equal rights. It's not hard. I've drafted the bill. And I didn't personally do it. I had parliamentary counsel do it, so it should be good. So please do that for me and for my partner and for everyone else, who just wants equality. It's not a lot to ask. And it's 2017. It's, again, long past time. Now, I think I may have skipped a page where I did not mention a couple of really important people to me. Erin Morton, who has been in my office for the last year, who has brought life and warmth and true gentleness, I guess, into our office. It has been a pleasure to have you in the office, and I wanted to particularly thank you for your work in organizing Pride at Parliament. Erin, trusted us that we would win the election, so she left her career and came into politics. So, I really hope that, you find your feet and find a new exciting challenge, and that you continue to blossom in new skills. It's been great to have you in the team. And Eloise Dortch, who I should have mentioned when I was talking at length about the shark call, has been also a tireless worker in my office. And the team that I have now is like family, and I will really, really miss you. It has been, I can't say it enough, it's just been so lovely. And we've all gone through tough times together. And I appreciate you being there for me to not only make sure that I did my job well, but also kept me, human, and kept me reminding me that sometimes I do have to have a break and spend time with Sarah. So I really do appreciate the team that I've had and how you have supported me. And I see Kyle there. I appreciate you too, Kyle. It's been great to be in your life these last 5 years, and it's great to see you there. And I hope that you get an opportunity one day to be down here and, maybe hopefully we will have already had marriage equality and, be looking after mature trees and all those things. I'll do a lot of that work for you. But, whether you have been a friend or a colleague, or whether you've been, just someone that I've encountered in my office and we've been able to help you, I want you to know you played a great role in my life, that you've, helped me to become a more fuller human being, given me an opportunity to be compassionate and to be understanding of difference and to learn new things, and also respect people even if they have a different way of thinking and a different value system than you. And I think that is such a great opportunity. And I know I can hear my father telling me that, that it's a really, important skill to have in life. And this is a good opportunity to have it here, as a member of Parliament and as a public servant as well. And I could not have done this job without the Honourable Robin Chappell by my side, who has been such a lovely man to work with. He's been a friend to me, and he's been my dinner companion when I've been grumpy. He's been very, very kind to me as I've navigated these waters, and I know that being successful in here relies on having a good buddy, and Robin's been that for me. And I now bestow that gift upon my colleagues, that the Greens colleagues now you can look after them and make sure that they navigate these waters well.
That'll be fine.
So, in concluding my remarks, Mr. President, it has been a journey that has been rewarding for me. It's sad that I'm going. I do feel sad going. But I have every faith that there's something on the horizon. There's a reason for this change in my career path. And that I will find a way to use the skills and the knowledge that I built up for the good of Western Australians, and hopefully I will continue to enjoy doing it, and maybe I'll have a little bit more sleep. It would be really good. But I will hopefully find some way that I can repay the citizens of Western Australia for the faith that they put in me and the tremendous opportunity they've given me to represent them in this place. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dave. You're awesome. Thanks, Donna.
All right, Lee.
Oh,
See you,
Peter.
mate.
Thank you. Uh-oh. Still going.
Thanks,
Right.
Ellen.
Good on you, Lynn. Well done.
Thanks, Rick.
No worries.
Take care.